year. So it's not necessarily designed to look at an event after the fact. In fact, these return intervals are often used for planning purposes for engineers. So it may not necessarily be the best way to kind of capture the impact of a weather event. That's why we usually go to, okay, so this is 4 times the monthly normal, or this is as much rain as we'd see over the course of an entire month in an hour, rather than going to the return interval, Jesse, because it can provide a little bit more context. Some of those other figures can.
Okay, and just a reminder of other people around New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand, who should be looking out for the weather at the moment. What sorts of areas are we talking about?
Yeah, so right on down the eastern part of the North Island. So right now, some heavy rainfall across the interior Bay of Plenty, Gisborne, also the lower North Island, Wellington, Wairarapa, across to the Marlborough region is seeing pockets of moderate to heavy rainfall right now. And for the Hawke's Bay, after all that rain on Monday, we're expecting that to probably return as we go into Tuesday night and Wednesday, a chance for thunderstorm activity to redevelop. So certainly not out of the woods just yet here in Napier, keeping a very close eye on the forecast over, say, the next 36 hours.
Really appreciate your time, Ben Knoll from Niwa. Nice to chat. Cheers.
Thanks, Jesse.
If you'd like to get in touch today, you can text me on 2101 or email to jesse@rnz.co.nz. 2 New Zealand scientists are leading the charge in calling for a change to restore Indigenous names to scientific species names. Professor Len Gilman is the head of AUT's School of Science, and Dr. Shane Wright, a senior biology lecturer from Auckland University, and they've had their case for change published in the Nature journal Communications Biology. To tell us more about what they're wanting to change and the sort of support they're getting, Professor Len Gilman joins me now. Kia ora, Len.
Kia ora, Jesse. Just one small correction.
Yeah.
I'm no longer head of science at AUT. I'm still at AUT, but I've finished that position earlier this year.
Thanks, Len. Hey, what got you on this path?
Well, it's always been something that I've thought for a very, very long time, that it's, a little bit colonialist in the way that scientific names kind of dispose the Indigenous name. When a publication is, the species is described, it's given a name by the person that's making that description. And this is despite the fact that those species have had names for centuries that have been unchanged and have been, part of the Indigenous knowledge.
Do you remember where you were when you started thinking about this? I think you were out in the nature, weren't you?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the very first time I started thinking about it was back when I was doing my BSc, so that's far too long ago to remember. But earlier this year, yes, I was out walking and it sort of came back to me, and I thought, actually it's about time actually did something about this, because there's no reason for this sort of replacement of names. We can go back and we can reintroduce the Indigenous names into the scientific binomial.
It strikes me that, and we often use the Māori names in Critter of the Week. Increasingly we do, and in fact we do it every week now. And one of the things I come across is that Māori, te reo Māori versions of these critters' names are often a little more general than the scientific names. Is that a problem?
Not really. Some names are more specific and some are more general. But the proposal that we're making is that the codes, the nomenclature codes change so that Indigenous people can make submissions. And so for a name to change, it would need to be a species that had that name across the entire distribution of those people. So for some species, there's not going to be a suitable name, but for others there will be. So Agathis australis could easily become Agathis kauri.
Maybe let's go back a step. Your published piece in the journal was called Restoring Indigenous Names in Taxonomy. Can you explain what taxonomy is and how it works?
Okay, well, taxonomy is really just the scientific process of assigning names, and it's not just the genus and species, but all the way back through the family and, up through the hierarchy of names. But there's the whole naming process is governed by international bodies. For example, for plants, it's the International Code of Nomenclature. And so the names are initially assigned when someone publishes a paper that for the first time describes that species. But of course, this is the first time it's published. Those species have had descriptions and knowledge attached to them that have gone back centuries before that.
And so how is it done currently? How's the name assigned, and how might the new system work?
Well, currently it's the first person, as I say, that publishes a valid description gets to designate the name, and so at least at the species level. So if they're fitting it in with an existing genus, the genus is already there with a name, and then they assign the species epithet to that name. So what we are proposing, though, is that Indigenous peoples or Indigenous groups of any kind should be able to submit to these international codes and say, well, this Indigenous name pre-existed, and we have evidence that it's pre-existed for however long, and it's only has that name across, or we agree that this is the name across a particular distribution of the species.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Can I introduce the new Deputy Leader of the National Party, Dr. Shane Reti. Both Dr. Shane and I were elected in the post unopposed, and a particularly good caucus meeting with lots of discussion, which I'm not going to tell you about, but which I thought was an extremely positive meeting.
Kia ora mai tātou. I'm just very proud today to have the support of caucus and to have the support of the leader and to be able to work with Judith to lead us forward.
Why did you take over?
Hopefully I am complementary to what Jerry brought to the table. Caucus has seen me as a safe pair of hands, as a trusted pair of hands and a hard-working pair of hands. All attributes that Jerry has, of course, as well, but caucus have asked me to step forward into this role today.
Well, I'm not announcing the portfolios right now because Dr. Shane and I are working through some of those, but in particular I can say that he will take the health portfolio.
When are you announcing your portfolio?
Most likely tomorrow afternoon, and there may be a day or two in it, but that's what I'm working on. Absolutely not. Everybody in the National Party should be welcome to have views on leadership and obviously their own as well. And I'm sure at some stage Dr. Shane will be an excellent leader of the National Party. Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
I think it's a great start. I think we've seen, obviously, we've gone through a gruelling and difficult campaign, and Dr. Shane was with me for much of that, particularly when we were in lockdown here in Wellington. We worked very, very well together, but I think too that caucus has decided that it is really important that everyone be working together, and everyone will have their role to play, and some of them would like to see it slightly differently and all that. But the best way to get forward is just to focus on what we need to do. Well, let's put it this way. Jacinda Ardern had no ministerial experience either. It doesn't seem to have hurt her.
Do you think the health background in the current climate is really important?
I think there are the two biggest issues will be around health and also obviously COVID response, and also in the economic space. And our country is already in a huge amount of debt compared to where we were even earlier this year. It's going to be really important that we put a big focus on the economy as well.
So I'm a person who probably is more moulded in the deputy's role along the lines of Bill English. I'm more akin to be sort of say less and do more. If I'm an engine room behind the leader, I'm an engine room beside all of my caucus colleagues. That's how I conduct myself.
Bill English when he was deputy to Jenny Shipley or deputy to Jenny?
I think we're working on the latter.
So, can you tell me when you decided you wanted to be deputy leader and how you went about it?
Several weeks ago, some of my colleagues had come to me and said, Shane, would you consider putting yourself forward? I reflected on that, had discussions with my mentors, trusted people and my family, and tested the waters, and there seemed to be an appetite for that. And so I then made my way amongst my colleagues to see if I would have their support. Oh, it's a privilege, an absolute privilege to have the mandate of caucus and to work with Judith and to advance us towards 2023. That's a privilege. I think we're placed here on our merits, and it just happens that I'm Māori and very proud to be Māori, so you'll see that now represented in the senior management of the leadership team. I think we all would want diversity across a range of attributes, so yes, that is desirable. No, not at all. I think the loss there, I've acknowledged the winner, congratulated her. I think the composure we have in defeat, both locally for myself and for us as a party, will be the composure that gets us over the line in 2023. Absolutely, I have an intense determination, relentless energy to win that seat back, and we will.
When did you make the decision to run for deputy leader?
About 2 weeks ago. No, I'm not worried about that. No, all we have in front of us is the needs of New Zealanders and what we're going to do to help that. That's what's in front of us now, that's what we're focused on. I think that's been well canvassed. I think clearly there are external factors that were out of our control, and then some of our internal factors that the review will focus on. I think it's a mix of all of those.
We'll wait for the review. Clearly we didn't get enough votes.
I think it was just one of many factors that resulted where we are here today.
Given you don't think Ms Collins will face a leadership challenge, why do you think she's best placed to become New Zealand's next Prime Minister?
Oh, because I've known Judith for a while now. I've seen her skills. She's got the skills, she's got compassion, she's got all the attributes that New Zealand would want in a Prime Minister, and she will be successful.
Is she your dream leader?
She is my dream leader. She is the leader who I work behind here at the moment, and she has my complete support. So in Boston, I was Chief Operating Officer for a division, both for our onshore and offshore deployments, and we were responsible. We started that division from scratch, and we were responsible for growing it and did a very good job with that. So I have had responsibility in this area. In division, I think there was about 20 internally, and then we had 2 operational teams. Largest operational team was in Kuwait. So it was those sort of numbers.
Mm-hmm. 18 months after an unsuccessful election. Are you worried that your job's at risk?
Not at all worried, and of course that happens in any party, but also I will go back to Jim Bolger, who took his party's leadership at a time of turmoil to a big defeat, but then came back to win the election with a landslide in 1990. So these things happen, and when a caucus asks you to step up at the last minute, you either decide to show the leadership required, or else people run the other way. I'm not prepared to run the other way.
In terms of tomorrow's reshuffle, what can people expect? Wholesale changes or just tweaks?
I think people will be quite surprised by some of the changes. One of the things I'm attempting to do, which I will share with you, is to give our caucus obviously some areas where they feel quite comfortable and they know a lot about, but also to get them to stretch out and to go into portfolios where they have not had the experience before, so that they will learn from that. I think it's a real problem in a caucus if everybody ends up getting pigeonholed into a particular area, and it's important in some areas, in some positions, but generally it's good for people to be able to stretch out and do something that they're not otherwise conversant with.
And what's the process been like for you? It's been difficult to keep the balance right?
It's always challenging. I mean, the last time I did this was the evening after I'd taken over as leader of the National Party in a very challenging time, and I basically did it in a few hours with a couple of people. I've been going through a process of interviewing every single MP, talking about where they see themselves in a few years' time in terms of their progression and professional development, but also what they have now and what they'd quite like to keep, and also where they see some other opportunities for them to add value. But I've also asked them to talk to me about and to think about professional development generally and understanding about we all have strengths and weaknesses and how can we help that. Obviously those would be discussions that I would keep to myself.
How do you think the caucus will handle the challenges of being a much smaller opposition here, far afield questions in the House, much less representation of select committees? How much of a struggle do you think that'll be for some who haven't had to go through that?
Do you know what? Everyone who turns up to our select committees will need to turn up. Absolutely. Absolutely put the focus into it, because we're unlikely to have more than 2 or 3 members on the select committee. It is really important that I think everybody will be very focused on that. And a caucus like ours that has gone through a difficult time, very difficult defeat and election campaign, they can either decide that they're going to come back in force and be absolutely focused on holding the government to account and coming back in another 3 years, or else they can decide to do what the Labour Party did after, when they lost twice and went to Cunliffe, and they ended up doing it even worse the next time. So they can either do that or not. I believe our caucus has decided that they want to move on, learn the lessons of the past and get on and do the job really, really well. And that's the message I'm giving and getting. Sorry? Oh, I don't think so. Oh, the caucus has done that, and Barbara Kuriga specifically told me that she had now I think about 3 years in the job. She's been outstanding in that, and she really, really wanted some portfolios to get her teeth into, and so she's getting exactly that.
Judith, it's been said that you're losing a lot of staff in this latest turnover.
Yeah.
How dire is your staffing situation?
Well, of course, we're not losing them by choice. It's the fact that when we had the defeat that we did and we lost electorates to the extent that we did, and particularly big electorates, that the funding for the National Leaders Office went down over, I think it's 56%. It's really tough, and so the second job I had as the leader coming in and dealing with, after the caucus, first caucus, was to advise staff, and I did most of that myself, and meet with them and tell them who wouldn't have a job and who would have a job. We will have some vacancies, but we're waiting till the new year to look to see where those gaps really are, and to make sure once people have got their portfolios as MPs, just how we fit that. That is the sad reality of losing MPs, as we lose staff. So it's not like we wanted to, it's what we've got.
How difficult was that process? You said you did a lot of it personally.
It's never easy. And fortunately, I could say that as someone who's been in business over the years and various other positions, I've had to do that for people before, never in those numbers. It was very hard, but the best way to treat people in situations like this is to treat them with dignity and to let them know straight away and not just send them out an email. Well, it doesn't seem to be organised. There's obviously not a lot of parliamentary business, and when we looked at it, it was around about, I think it's about, they're talking about 5 sitting days or something, or whatever. I must say the public must be wondering, taxpayers must be wondering about value for money, but interesting. Well, I don't know because I wasn't there, but I think that the government would need to respond itself. Well, I have to say I haven't seen them yet, and that's only because I've been working on this, but I'm very sure that some of the finance people we have are busily looking at all of that. I also say too is that people need to also consider the IMF report, which is very clear recently that the worst of the economic times are going to be hitting, and most likely in about 18 months to 2 years' time.
Oh, very proud. We all enjoy each other's company. We respect that we have different views, but we can collaborate together. So I think the people in Northland will be very proud. It's not. We've done that for the past 3 years. We do what we need to do in the business end of the house, and then we're colleagues in whanaunga outside of the house.
Did you ever imagine you'd be the Deputy Leader of the National Party?
No, I did not. I just wanted to, and will continue to want to be the best MP I can be for the people of Whangarei.
Shane said that you're his dream leader. Is he your dream deputy?
Well, yes, and of course, whoever the deputy was, I would always work with that person. But I thought Dr. Shane did an excellent job during when he was handed the health portfolio, and I thought that just being part of our small team that was here, working so hard and always with a positive smile on his face, doing the work behind, and actually I'm really pleased that he's got that job. And you know, I just think we're so lucky to have people like Dr. Shane. Oh, I always thought it would be better, but it was not something that I could have ever mandated, and so I never did. It's always good for caucus to come to views, and I think the caucus decided that they were going to come to that view collectively. Oh, did he? Okay, I wasn't aware. Mark is coming. You know, he's got some really good stuff coming for him in terms of portfolios, and I really want to value his work.
Oh, look, I've been called a lot worse before, and I'll be called a lot worse in the future. I'm very comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it, though? I think it's a good one.
I'm quite comfortable with that. It's fine.
Right, thank you, everybody.
Very good.
Thanks
Thank
for being
you.
here.
Thank you.